Shabbat Shalom. Join us in singing Hine Matov as we open our Shabbat morning experience. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. 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 Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad.
Shabbat Shalom. We are so glad to be with you. Shabbat Shalom, Aaron.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi Geffen.
Hey. In a second, my whole other screen that shows us who's with us on Facebook just went away. So I'm going to go get it back up at some point soon. But I do know that Susan Longo was with us. I saw her there, and there may be a few others at this point. But good morning, Shabbat Shalom, wherever you are, you who are joining us. We are thrilled to be with you on this gorgeous Shabbat morning. We hope that you have access to our text sheets. They are linked up if you're with us on Facebook in the comments, and you can just click there to follow along. If you do not see that link or are with us on a different site, you can follow along by going to www.nsci.org/Shabbat, Shabbat, and you will see there that there is a part for Shabbat Morning Experience and a link to our text sheet. So our intern student rabbi, Aaron Binder-Kurland, and I, Rabbi Wendy Geffen, are really excited to be with you this morning. We will jump right in to our service. So wherever you are, if you are new, to this Shabbat morning experience, we do invite you to participate with us. Even though we can't hear each other collectively, please do read aloud, sing aloud. It does make a difference in the experience that we each have. And I actually believe it makes an experience that we share together. So please do join me reading aloud. We call each other to worship, although we forget and sometimes do not listen. We call each other to worship with one breath, one song, one voice. At this sacred time, which is every time, in this sacred place, which is every place, with this sacred congregation, which is every congregation, we unfold together into the endless blessing of the eternal and call each other to worship. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvorech choshech, oseh shalom et hakol. The morning wind forever blows, the poem of creation is uninterrupted, but few are the ears that hear it. Something worth us taking into consideration this morning as we enter into the season that brings us up to the high holy days, specifically Rosh Hashanah, 7 weeks from today. And so Rosh Hashanah, celebrating the birthday of the world, celebrating all creation. I often see this period of time as an opportunity for many, many things, one of which is an opportunity for us to become sensitized to and grateful for the miracle of creation, which we see around us every day, all the time, every moment. It is something always available to us. So something just to think about as you mark this first Shabbat of the 7 Shabbatot leading to the High Holy Days, and something we hope you'll invest some of your own spiritual work in. Let's continue on the bottom of page 1. Love your neighbor as yourself, you said. And light blinded, we saw that inner and outer worlds are one as you are one. You spoke and we wrote. We reached for you down the centuries, your light moving before us. As we climbed, fell back, and climbed again, your Sinai of life. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael, be'ahava.
As we spoke about last night, these words of Shema v'ahavta are in this week's Torah portion. So in this moment, we take a deep breath, whether you sit or stand, whether you cover your eyes with a shin, 3 letters in a shin, whether you just simply close them for a moment of concentration. We join together in these sacred words atop page 2. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol me'odecha behayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha vishinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam Beshivtecha beveitecha uvlechtecha vaderech uvshochbecha uvkumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha behayu letotafot beineinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai V'tem kedoshim Elohechem, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, Liot lachem Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem. Emet.
So we find ourselves on the bottom of page 2, this reading from Abraham Joshua Heschel. Let's join together. The meaning of the Sabbath is to celebrate time rather than space. 6 days a week, we live under the tyranny of things in space. On the Sabbath, we try to become attuned to holiness in time. It is a day on which we are called upon to share in what is eternal in time, to turn from the results of creation to the mystery of creation, from the world of creation to the creation of the world. We'll move on to page 3, continuing in this focus on the meaning of the Sabbath of Shabbat. On this holy Shabbat, may we draw nearer to life, to peace, and to joy. May we find true rest, holiness in our deeds, worth in our study of Torah. Let us feed on the love of goodness. Let us drink from the love of goodness, restrain our thirst for excess, and cleanse our hearts to serve life well. On this holy Shabbat, may we draw nearer in life, in peace, and in joy. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, u'lecha na'el lehodot.
We join in a prayer for peace. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova uveracha. Ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, sim, sim shalom tova uveracha. Baruch atah Adonai hamavarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. As we sing of peace and of wholeness, we also lift up that which is broken. We, as Rabbi Geffen mentioned, we're in the 7-week period of special Shabbatot, this week being Shabbat Nachamu, which we get from the book of Isaiah, which is our Haftarah for this Shabbat. This is Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami, Yomar Elohechem. God says, comfort my people, comfort my people. So we turn now to this moment of healing where we seek that comfort, whether of healing of body, of spirit, of mind. And we invite you to say the names of those who might be in need of that healing, whether it is a loved one or even yourself, to write it in the chat, the name in the chat, or even just to say it out loud in your space. And we join in this sacred space of healing. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofeh HaCholim. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings healing and comfort to those in need. Yehiyu v'ratzon imrei fi, v'hegyon libi lefanecha. Adonai tzuri v'goali. Adonai tzuri v'goali.
Thank you, Erin. So we'll turn now, as has become, gosh, I guess it is our custom. Maybe it's even our tradition at this point, on Saturday mornings, on Shabbat mornings, to turn to the opportunity to study Torah. But before we do that, just want to greet, now that my internet is all back up and the setup is working, just want to greet the people, at least that I see. Shabbat Shalom to Robin and David Grossberg. Shabbat Shalom to Steve Levine, Danny Rozowski, Deborah and Dave Cohen. Oh, and Gabe Cohen, Steve and Debbie Dresner, Sam Evans, Jack Weinberg, although he's here under the handle of Sheila Weinberg, so we'll give Sheila a shout out as well. We are really thrilled that you are all here with us. And if I haven't said your name, if you reveal yourself in the comments on Facebook, I will. So wherever you are, whether you are remaining anonymous. Oh, and Taryn Kessel, I see you there too. Shabbat Shalom. So if I didn't mention your name, like I said, please know you are with us in spirit, and we feel your presence. So we will move now into the opportunity for the study of Torah, and we will begin that study by saying the blessing for the study of Torah, this blessing which reminds us to busy ourselves, immerse ourselves in the work and the study of Torah. So, oh, and Rabbi Mason is here too. Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi Mason. So let's join together in the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So in some respects, if you turn to page 4, you'll see our texts for today. And in some respects, this blessing, the bracha that we just said, is the best introduction to our study that we could have, because today we will study one way, the way we are offered by our tradition to understand what it means to bring Torah into our lives, to immerse ourselves, to busy ourselves in the study of Torah. And I dare say why, I often will hear from congregants, children, teenagers in particular, but also adults, full-fledged adults at any point along life's journey, who will say to me, when they hit moments of, I'd say, doubt or cynicism, they may say to me, why do Jews, meaning us, spend so much time studying a text and quote unquote following a text and teachings that are just so old and antiquated and really have nothing to do with me, whomever the speaker is. And I think that's the place from which I'd like us to begin today, which is opening up that question. Not just why should we study, and not just what's in it for me, the individual, but perhaps to open up a doorway to the possibility that our Torah text from its inception was designed for us, for whenever the us exists, to be able to access it. And in that respect proves not ancient, but rather as real time as it can be in any moment in time. And that's the framework from which we'll study today. Oh, and I see that Irv and June Amato are here as well. So Shabbat Shalom, Irv and June. So as I think Aaron and I now have both mentioned, we are in this period of time leading up to the High Holy Days, these 7 Shabbatot. That should likely, for those of you who study or are familiar with Jewish tradition, you will likely immediately think back to the counting of the Omer, which is another parallel 7-week cycle leading us from one marker to another, in that case from Pesach to Shavuot, right? From redemption to revelation, in the collective sense, and then also in the personal sense. And here we find ourselves in a similar period of time, in this case though, journeying from destruction to wholeness, right? So it's a really powerful idea when one invests themselves in the cycles of Jewish study and Jewish time, how you can take these 7 sets of 7 weeks, which if you're kind of like a numbers geek or something, this should resonate powerfully for you as kind of a whole or perfect number in a Jewish frame. If 7 is the number of creation and completion, and you do 7 weeks 7 times, right? That should feel like an entire cycle. So we see that playing out here as well. And in this case, also on the collective level and the interpersonal level or deeply personal level. So I want to kind of make sure you have that awareness in mind as well as we now move into our study. So do me a favor, at the top of the page, there's just a teaching from Dr. also Rabbi Jonathan Cohen, who sets that framework up very nicely. So if you're interested in that idea, you can read his remarks. But I want to bring us right into this week's Parsha, Va'et Hanan. This week's Torah portion kind of like takes all of the important texts and ideas throughout the whole Torah and just puts them in one. So like if you needed a Cliff Note situation for Torah, you might go to Va'et Hanan, right? So in Va'et Hanan, we get Shema, which of course includes V'ahavta. We get the second major iteration of the 10 Commandments, although there are 3 iterations of the 10 Commandments. The other one is a little less well known, but it is in Torah. But here is the Exodus and Deuteronomic tellings were in the Deuteronomic telling of the 10 Commandments, among many other critical ideas. This is also the Torah portion where we learn that Moses definitively is not coming with us once we cross over into the promised land. It begins with him pleading God to let him. And God says very clearly to him, no. Nice try, but no. Or as one Midrashic text says, it's not necessary. You've already achieved your goal. You can rest now, which is a different framing for that idea. But we'll go in here to the setup of the idea that we want to bring forward. So take a look at Deuteronomy 5, verses 2 and 3. This is part of a longer section of text, but for the sake of time, I've excerpted it. So I'll just read that and you can follow along. Adonai, our God, made a covenant with us at Horeb. That's Deuteronomy's way of saying Sinai. Mount Sinai specifically. It was, and then I've underlined this for a few reasons, not with our ancestors that Adonai made this covenant, but with us, the living, every one of us who is here today. So before we kind of dig into interpretations of this, I want us just to look at the pshat, the mainstream meaning of this text. All right, so when you read this, what comes across to you as the main message? And I guess, Aaron, feel free to jump in at whenever you're ready, and I'll kind of keep an eye out also for thoughts on Facebook.
One of the main ways that I kind of was instructed or guided to dive into Torah was this threefold approach of what does the text say, right? This pshat level. What does it mean? And what does it mean to me? So already inherently, like we're diving into what does it mean to us? What does it mean in our lives? And this right here is just speaking to that. It's like telling us to do that.
Yes. Yeah, beautiful. And like to set this in just in its own context, literally in Torah, we're in the generation of folks who were born free. The Jews who are receiving this information in Deuteronomy never knew slavery. Their narrative is over. We are speaking to those born in the wilderness, the second generation, essentially, or the first free generation. And here, the framing of it is unlike other framings that exist in Torah, where the idea is, no, God made the covenant with our ancestors, and you're lucky to sort of like receive it, but it's not because of you or for you, it was for them. They were, it's because of the merit of our ancestors, zechut avot, right? And here in Deuteronomy, which is the probably most forward-thinking book of Torah, we hear a very different idea. We hear the idea being, no, this stuff was given specifically for you, not for them. That's the Torah text, right? It's a 180-degree departure from, oh, forget the ancestors. This is all for you. I don't know how that resonates for you, Aaron, or for our friends on Facebook, but it's a pretty extreme construct, the not for them, but for us. And so I'll say that Rashi picks up on that tension immediately. And if you look in the second note here, or the second text, major text on this page, where it says Rashi on Deuteronomy, Rashi riffs on this part that's underlined, not with our ancestors, right? And he says, the Torah can't actually mean it wasn't for them at all. Rashi's not ready to throw away the past. Rashi clarifies that is not only with our ancestors, but also with us. So we can't completely lobotomize ourselves from everything that's come before. We're still connected, but it is also for us, not just for them. Go ahead, Aaron, sorry.
No, Rashi takes a yes and approach, right? That it's, you hold both of those. And that's a lot of what our tradition does, is holding, like things that might be in tension really together. And I like what Jack said, which is that the Torah is a living document, that both, it brings to life what is this text, in addition to the generations that engage with it. So again, it's these two things that are ongoing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and I would just say, you see sort of even the notion that a commentator can offer a tweak on the idea without completely eliminating the integrity of the idea speaks to the real-time living nature of Torah. And I see that, Susan Longo says, but the question is, what does it mean to be here? I'm not sure exactly what, we could interpret that question a lot of different ways, but I would say that if we're looking for the answer in the text of Deuteronomy, right, in chapter 5, verse 3, through the framework of living Torah, here, as is often the same, this happens in Deuteronomy all the time. For example, you might be familiar in Nitzavim, the word hayom, this day, is always used. And the interpretation of that is, it means whenever a person is reading it, whatever day that is, wherever they are, that's the day, and this is here. So for me, here is, I'm in the office in my home, right? My kids are probably on the internet. I don't know what my husband is doing, right? Like, this is my reality right here, right now. And this is the Torah that's speaking for me, to me right now. And my here and now is no better, worse, different from any other here and now. Whether it was our ancestors waiting to cross over into the promised land, whether it was someone 300 years ago, whether it will be someone 1,000 years from now. That here is everywhere for all time, infinite, but not lacking particularity. I mean, it's a kind of quantum physics idea. And I see that, Danny, you wrote, it's an agreement to learn from our ancestors to not make the same mistakes in life as they did. Great, right? So that's, I love what Danny says there, because that's what Rashi does when Rashi doesn't allow us to untether from the past, right? If there was no Rashi text, we could take this text to say, here is limited to only here. I don't need any information from what's happened before, and I don't need to think about anything that's going to happen because of what I do after me. I only am accountable in the here and now, and I can use whatever excuse I want because I don't need the benefit of history. But Rashi's point is, no. It was with your ancestors too. And you're a receiver of all of that. You know, in fact, where they may hit the mark, didn't hit the mark. You know the triumphs and struggles of the past in your collective life, in your own life. And Torah and its covenant with God and you is all brought to bear in that. Really, really important and powerful. And I just want to get these are great comments. Rabbi Mason says this is radical. Even as Abraham found out that God was not fixed in one location. Yes, great. Revelation isn't fixed in one moment in time. It is for every generation. And yes, it is radical. And sometimes, like, I don't know if you can see on the screen, but sometimes I get like Torah goosebumps when I'm studying. And like that happens to me in these conversations, because if one is to take a academic viewpoint of Torah and understand, let's say on the very conservative side, that Torah is 2,000 years old, right? Torah would like us to believe that it is way older than that, but there's any number of scholars who would say, no, really, it's about 2,000 years old. But let's go with that. It's 2,000 years old, and it's talking about the eternality of time, space. It's such an advanced physics concept, no less spiritual concept. And it's rooted, encoded into this really old book that some might say doesn't have anything to offer me today. I think like this is what reveals itself to the point of the ongoing revelation of Torah, for anyone who might choose to spend time in it. And then, yeah, as Stephen says, Shabbat is a reality. It's not mythical, it is here and now. So let's move forward. We're going to go to, you don't know it, or maybe you do know it. Those who are here with us probably do know it. But when Aaron was chanting Shema and V'ahavta, you were chanting too, probably. And that meant you were chanting today's Torah portion. So although you don't have a Torah in front of you, probably, everyone here has just chanted Torah. So let's look at the text specifically, Deuteronomy 6, 4 through, I just have included 4 through 6. The larger text is 4 through 9. So hear, O Israel, or listen up, Jewish people. Adonai is our God. Adonai is one. Some translate that to be Adonai alone. There's a whole different conversation to be had about that. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength or might. Set these instructions, which I charge you this day, on your heart. All right, so here we have a very familiar text, but we turn quickly to Rashi, who offers us this same framework around that. So, okay, so the word here we assume is locational. So what does this day mean, right? Sort of what I was referencing before. And Rashi in 6:6 speaks on this idea of this day. What does it mean? And he says explicitly, they, meaning the instructions, the mitzvot, the teachings, should not be seen as an obsolete decree, which no one, now this is translated as no one minds, that's colloquial. There are different, there are different ways to translate that. I would just understand that as meaning which no one pays attention to is probably a better way of understanding that. But as one newly given, which everyone gladly welcomes. So how does that resonate with you, for you?
I think it's fascinating because we, we shouldn't become kind of glazed over at what's happening in our world. That we should, we should be paying attention, and we should be engaging in the mitzvot in this case, but also the happenings, right, of our world.
Yeah, beautiful, right? We should be engaged in that. And I mean, should is a tricky word. It's a useful word if one will use it to motivate themselves. It's a shaming word if one doesn't. But I think in this case, it's well placed. I think should is at play, and there is some judgment in this text, and certainly our Torah comes from the viewpoint that there is a right path and a wrong path, and the right path involves mitzvot, bringing them into your lives, studying Torah, loving God with all your heart, all your soul, all your might. We can argue about, okay, who's God and what does it mean to love them? However one wants to understand that, but it definitively assumes that the correct path is the one of immersing oneself that way, that it is not okay not to. So from that viewpoint, though, Rashi says it's not just about doing them, it's actually about gladly welcoming them, right? So not just I accept upon myself the mantle or the burden of the mitzvot, and I feel the heaviness of that. But also, or maybe even, or I'm really psyched about it, that I get this opportunity to do that maybe I'm going to come to understand a teaching, a mitzvah, a Jewish idea in a new way, and that will bring meaning to my life or to the life of others or the world. In this period of 7 weeks, I think that's what's the opportunity or the invitation that's being presented to us, is not just okay, so am I going to bring Judaism into my life more because I know that's the right thing to do, but how can I bring Judaism into my life more so that I might delight in it, right? There's something to that joyfully welcoming, psychologically speaking, at least, that tends to go better in a return on the investment of time and energy than it does if I'm oh, I have to do it. We're just at odds in that case. And I think that's one of the ideas that Rashi's trying to get around. Again, remember, what's the command? We're talking about love here. And it'd be difficult if one was oh, I have to love. Ugh. Hard to cultivate a sense of love if you're feeling forced, And I actually don't know that you can cultivate a sense of love if you're feeling forced. It's an interesting question to even think about. So let's push forward. Let's move out of the 11th century and 2000 to 4,000 years ago, and come a little later into a midrashic text. Okay, so this is from Yalchut Shmoni, and this is a midrash that gets into the same idea, construct. Okay, said Rabbi Levi, and the H-A-K-B-A-H is Hakadosh Baruch Hu. It's an abbreviation, and Hakadosh Baruch Hu means the Holy One, blessed be God. So we could just say God, okay? So Hakadosh Baruch Hu appeared to them like a picture which is visible from all angles. So like 3D imagery or something like that. Yes, the full, or a 360 view. Now you can do that on your, if you have like an iPhone or something. I just saw that that's an option recently. 1,000 people may gaze on it, this image, and it gazes on all of them. So is Hakadosh Baruch Hu, God. When God spoke, every individual Israelite maintained, to me, the word spoke. I am Adonai, your God, is not written here in the plural, but I am Adonai, your God, in the singular, to you, singular. If in Hebrew, it would be ata, you. In French, it would be tu, not vous, something like that.
It's the difference you versus y'all.
Thank you so much. Exactly. For us Texans, it is the difference between you and y'all. That's the best way. Thank you, Erin. Feel that. All right, so says Rabbi Yossi, in accordance with each and everyone's personal capacities, did the word speak to them. Do not be astonished at the manna, which came down on the Israelites. This is referencing a familiar idea for those of you who've studied this text. Each one tasting the flavor they were capable of appreciating. The infants in accordance with their capacities, the young in accordance with theirs, and the old in accordance with theirs. If that was so in the case of the manna, that everyone tasted the flavor they could appreciate, the sacred word of divine revelation, all the more so. Said David in Psalm 29, the voice of Adonai is in strength. It does not say in his strength, but just strength, meaning in accordance with the strength of each person. So what's being offered for us here? I mean, this is a wild idea. You talk about breaking all the laws of time, space, sound, right? what is the idea being presented?
A couple of weeks ago, we studied with Rabbi Daniels in the Shabbat Morning Experience, and one of the verses that we talked about was from Proverbs, the notion of to teach or to instruct a child in their own way. And this is exactly right. Like, it's just seeped into our tradition that we are individuals, that we all have different things that we bring and ways that we contribute to this tradition. Which is, I think, so powerful. And also, I was working with a young pre-B'nai Mitzvah student yesterday, and we were going through Via Hafta, and she was like, why is there so much ch at the end of every word? And in the beginning part of Via Hafta, it really is that singular. But then eventually when we get to the Lema'an Tizkaru, we come back to the plural. And so again, they like these are the things that go hand in hand, is that we are both individuals in this family of families in the way that we come together as community.
Yeah, beautiful. And I love, there's this sort of idea of what comes first, what comes second. And in the framework of it beginning with the individual, right? In my mind, that's how I can understand the effectiveness of the creation of a community where everyone is bought in, right? If it doesn't speak to me as an individual at all, but I'm only in it for the collective, meaning I feel no personal connection, my staying power in that community, I think, is likely limited, because what's in it for me? And that's not to say that humans are selfish, but we do have self-interest. That's how we become accountable. There's nothing wrong with that. And without it, we have no skin in the game. So why would we participate? Why would we learn if it's just about everything else? It's the idea that both are required. And here, this idea being presented in Yalkut Shmoni is the Torah is given right? In its revelatory sense to each person in a way that means something to them, meaning there is something in it for everyone, but it's given to them that way. They don't have to like seek it out. If they're open enough to receiving it, they'll receive it that way. Just like the manna, you know, if a baby drinks milk, it tasted like milk. If a kid wants it to taste like Twinkies and a grown-up wants it to taste like filet mignon, then that's how it was received. It's like a Willy Wonka idea, right? So here, this text brings the manna to say that was just about physical sustenance. Here we're talking about soulful sustenance, and it is given in the exact same way, customized, personalized. And I would just say, like, could there be a more contemporary text for us? Right? We live in a society that loves customization, that wants personalized everything. And that has its dangers, which is why I think that your point is very important. The texts may start here, but they don't end here. They end in the collective. They end in, okay, so for what purpose? And it's always for something greater than any individual. But it begins in a place that I think anyone in our modern age, certainly in our country, could understand, which is without a personal connection to it, without you feeling that it's for you, it just doesn't mean much.
I also think that there's something so powerful about, like, this is how it's given to you, but how you receive it, like, you in a sense like have to be open to it. You have to be willing to consider all that it has to offer. And I think that that goes to the last little bit there on the sheet.
Yeah. And I just want to say also, let's not make the mistake and think that any one individual person or you is the same every day for all time. You know, I often, same kind of idea, a lot of times adults in particular will come to me and be like, I don't believe in God. And I'll be like, cool, tell me about the God you don't believe in. And they'll be like, I don't believe that God is a man in the sky who rewards and punishes. And I'll say, I'm sorry if there are any kids out there, but I don't believe in Santa Claus either. Why would you? You know, that's the Santa God. And that's a good concept of God to teach to very, very young children. But often people's theological kind of education, willingness to flex is stunted or stagnated because they come to understand that even so the definition of God must be fixed, right? But that's not what's being offered here. It's not that one individual even is the same throughout their existence. We evolve and change, I hope, as human beings throughout the course of our lives, and how one might understand or what one might need to learn or hear or receive at any given moment, any given day, any given location should be different from what it was the day before, the year before, whenever that was. You know, it's sort of like, and we see this throughout anything in Judaism. You know, it says, no offense to those of you who are here, but some of our congregants will often come to a given service and say, you know, well, I didn't like the music. That's not the music that I'm familiar with. Or I don't like these prayer translations. They're not the ones I grew up with. And what is true is we can't forget where we came from. We always need to bring as much along with us as possible. So something shouldn't be completely uprooted from what it was before. But there is nothing threatening or bad in the evolving articulations of our teachings, our prayers, our melodies, all of it. They're meant to be organic and alive and necessarily, therefore, have to change. And that's an invitation into Jewish practice. So did you want to say something?
I just wanted to lift up some of the comments that were made, which is Jack said, history teaches us that we make, so that, you know, we make the same mistakes again. And then Susan brings forward Rabbi Alan Liu, who writes a lot about this season, this journey of transformation in these high holy days, that says, like, the purpose of these 7 weeks is what is the reason for our brokenness and what do we not repeat? So it's baked into our tradition that we tell the story over and over. We come to it every year, but we are different each and every time.
Yeah. And yes. And I think like part of the invitation is to align those two forces, right? Like, so Jack writes, there's discomfort to change. Of course, who likes change? Actually, I actually love change. I hate stability, but that's like my own pathology, and I need therapy for that or whatever. But the most people really don't want to change. It makes us feel completely unhinged. And it could be not wanting to change from as simple as like what we eat for breakfast every day. Forget personality, character, choices, behaviors, that's like a whole different ball game. But perhaps this 7-week journey is about inviting ourselves into the possibility that we may have a sort of reptilian brain reaction against change, but if we can quiet that voice and accept that change is actually for the benefit of everyone, including ourselves, so that we can grow, evolve, become better. That's the heart of Teshuvah, right? And we have the same story that happens every year along the way. How can we bring ourselves, I'm doing a lot with my hands today, but how can we bring ourselves closer to alignment? Because otherwise we do just repeat the same things. And then we're going like this, we're not any closer to here. We're just doing our own thing. The tradition is going to come around. We can say the words, we can sing the same melodies, but it's not affecting anything. And then maybe that's a waste of time. I would say to someone, I don't really get why people would participate in this experience of the High Holy Days and not buy into the potential or the possibility of it. It's like paying a lot of money to go to the best concert in the world, but bringing headphones and listening to something else while you're there. Like, why do that? Use your time better, do something else. But our tradition says, no, the ultimate truth is being revealed to you in what you need to know right now to be your best self. And all you have to do is open your eyes and ears. But once you do, you're going to be responsible for it. You're going to be accountable. You can't forget what you heard or saw. And I think that's the part that people are scared about, which brings us to our last text. And here we're going to move into a relatively modern Hasidic text, last 200 years. And here Menachem Mendel Alter is riffing on your heart from Ve'ahavta. All right. And he says, namely, that the mitzvot, the instructions, should rule your heart, that you control your heart and not have your heart control you. And that's the rub. Because if you take it to heart, it means you are in control. You make your choices. Remember, Judaism is a free will believing religion, and you can't claim ignorance if you've brought it to you. So if I've been influenced by the wisdom, if I've opened my eyes and ears, but I still repeat the same behavior, then I have the work of teshuvah to do. I could try to run away, but I'll just be like Adam and Chava in the garden, joking with God, like, we're hiding. Sure you are. So, these are really important ideas for understanding what's at stake, what's being offered to us, how we might engage more deeply should we choose to do that, and what we can expect will come along the way. Any final comments, Erin?
David Cohen writes, don't I have to balance what I bring forward with me, because it can also weigh me down and limit my growth moving forward? And to Jack's point, change brings growth, right? So it might bring discomfort, but also it brings growth. And for those who studied Pirkei Avot with me, we talked about what's greater, study or practice. And we study and we immerse ourselves in it in order that we may practice, and we do so, as this text tells us, with our whole selves.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And like, I would say the answer to what's greater, study or practice, is yes, right? Like And we know that in every other part of our lives intuitively, right? We know that, think of a relationship with someone you love. We know that if you feel that you love them, but you don't tell them you love them, or you tell them you love them, but you don't act in ways that demonstrate the love, you're a hypocrite. We know that. That's not difficult to understand. But for some reason, we have a synapse collapse when it comes to Jewish practice. Now, I'm not saying or even suggesting that what this means is you must follow all the commandments in the way that they were meant to be followed. I think all these texts come to say that that doesn't exist. You know, if we hear and intake what we need, then the path is given for us and it's personalized. And every person is accountable to what they become accountable for, to, etc. But there is something to the accountability that one has to it, that, you know, if it becomes in name only, yeah, I study Judaism, I study every day, but my business practices, my personal practices out in the world are not aligned, you know, then I've got some work to do. That there is the hypotenuse is disconnected, right? So I think that's really what's at stake for us, or what's being offered to us here in this period of 7 weeks, is how can we get ourselves on a path of alignment so that we can come together in integrity with what we say, what we know, what we do, what we believe, who we are, who we can be. And I hope that that's something that all of us, you know, will do our best to make possible. And as I always say, the good news is, you know, God willing, we'll always have the next year, because these things do come around and around and around again. So there is always more work to be done. Thank you everyone for studying and learning with us this morning. We are so glad you were with us. And Erin, thank you as always for the conversations. I love being able to study Torah with you. So let's turn now to memory. Speaking of the past, the places from where we came, the people we have come from, to take a moment to remember those in our community and their loved ones who've died in recent days, and those who died at the season in years past. So we'll remember first those who are mourning in Shloshim, and you can feel free to include in the chat anyone you're remembering this Shabbat as well, in particular if their name isn't on our list. So for Shloshim, we remember Martin Richard Borden, Jerry Don, Wharton A. Friedman, Jackie Jaffe, Gail Persino, Marion Wolf, Noel Zidell. And for Yahrzeit, we remember Alfred Edelman, Henry Anderson, Melvin Bell, Richard Allen Berg, Gail Karen Bergen, Philip Berman, Martin Blackman, Ruth Bohm, Philip Bramson, John Stewart Breiter, Debbie Lynn Braun, Sam Castle, Regina Cohn, Zachary Archer Cohn, Nancy Lee Fellner Crawford, Barbara Davidson, Julius Deutsch, Rochelle Shelley Diamant, Dr. Albert Dorfman, Barbara Dutzik, Betty Ephron, Irving Elbling, Louis Fishman, Ida E. Foreman, Samuel Friedstadt, Alan Gidwitz, Kelly Goldboss, Rose Goldfarb, Claire A. Greenspan, Max Grove, Leslie Butch Grusin, Ruth Haas, Charles Solly Hammersley, Samuel Harris, Bernadine Hollab, Lawrence Jaffe, Beverly Cantor, Sarah Katz, Rebecca Fagenbaum Kaufman, Arthur Kirsten, Harriet Koloff, Bertha Lapine, James H. Levy, Harry Levin, Richard Levitt, June Lipman, William Lipman, Harriet Krieger Lewis, Esther Matthew, Linda Miller, Joan L. Mizell, Martha Moose, Daniel Moss, Audrey Nafak, Benjamin S. Newhausen, Bernice Stein Newberger, Beth Elise Penko, Benjamin Patterson, Rhonda Presley, Alex Rappaport, Martha H. Rosenthal, David Ruski, Jacob Sang, William L. Saranow, Harry Schneiderman, Frida Shapiro, Archie Siegel, June Skolnick, Alice Sorkin, Philip Stark, Rose Sweat, Anna Swieskin Tapper, Marjorie L. Tick, Aaron C. Tuman, Elaine Klein-Wallace, Theodore S. Wilner, Bernard Yador, Gertrude Hatowski-Zadek. May all of their memories be blessings among us. Let's join together in the words of Kaddish. You can follow along with those on page 5 of our text sheet. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divarach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, v'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shemei dekud shah brichu, le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, ta'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. L'osei shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Zichronam livracha, may all of their memories be blessings. Amen. We just want to say thank you again to all of those who were with us here on the internet, whether on Facebook, StreamSpot, YouTube, wherever you are, because every place you are is the same one existence we all share together, and nothing can take that away from us. So we wish you Shabbat Shalom. We hope you'll join us on Facebook tonight at 8:30 for Havdalah with the Brueggemann and Sorkin clans. We're really excited. That's going to be awesome. And keep your eyes open for a lot of upcoming programs, opportunities to engage together as we move forward into Elul coming up in a couple weeks. Hard to believe. So Erin, will you lead us in our closing song?
We'll close this morning, this beautiful morning of study and of prayer with the words Oseh Shalom. Oseh Shalom, Shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Ve'al kol Yisrael, amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom. Have a great day.